The story of the woman at the well. When Jesus shows up at the well, she's got this attitude of like, what are you doing here? So she ignores him. And many people, when they first encounter God, they sort of ignore him, right? And then Jesus engages her, tries to engage her. She's very standoffish. Very often when God tries to engage us, we're very standoffish. And Jesus asks her for, some water. And she's like, well, you don't have a bucket. And he says, well, I'll give you water, different type of water. She's like, well, where are you going to get that from? Again, don't have a bucket. And so she goes from ignoring him to being standoffish, to being curious, to being skeptical. Okay, where are you going to get this living water from? You tell me if I have this living water, then I won't never be thirsty ever again. Where are you going to get that living water from, and you don't even have a bucket? And of course, here in this particular part of her journey, we see very clearly that she's trying to apply human thinking to a spiritual reality, that she's trying to materialize a spiritual reality, when the reality is that Jesus' water doesn't need a bucket. Or the water that Jesus is talking about doesn't need a bucket. And so she goes from ignoring him to being standoffish to this curiosity, to this skepticism. It's like, how are you going to do that? And then he tells her about her life, and that of course captures her imagination. That intrigues her. It's like, hold on a minute, this guy just showed up in town and he knows about me and he knows about my life. And at that point, she calls him a prophet, which in and of itself is a profession of faith, a minor profession of faith, because she acknowledges, okay, you've got a gift, you're a prophet, you've been sent by God. And then she goes to her friends, to her family, to the village and says, hey, come and check this guy out. He told me all about my life. And as the people encounter him, as the people react to him, they then begin to refer to him as the Messiah. And so in this one reading, we see this whole journey from ignoring God, to being standoffish with God, to being curious about God, to being skeptical about God, to believing in God, and of course to being open to God's ways and God's plans. And so much is accomplished in so short a time in this one story in the Bible. And this, of course, is just one way to look at it. Just one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is to compare our journey with the woman's journey. How will you listen to the gospel when you're in Mass tomorrow?